doing a project, like go to, I don't know, GitHub, go to your local areas, find somebody who wants to go build a solution using that technology that you've just learned, but give yourself the ability to leverage that technology to solve a problem. Because at the end of the day, we're all here trying to solve problems. So if you look at something and you're like, oh, I could solve it with technology, try building it. It doesn't have to be for a company. You can build it for yourself. You can build it for the people you're trying to solve for. And that's how you learn. That's how you figure out how you can leverage your skills that you've just learned, to solve problems. Because at the end of the day, that's how companies like Google, companies like Microsoft come along, right? Like they started with solving small problems with technology, and then they grew from there. So as long as you're able to learn, as long as you're able to explore, and then as long as you're able to apply that skill in a day-to-day problem that you see somewhere around yourself, I think that's one way of kickstarting your career in that regard.
Awesome. That's really marvelous. And one thing which I took from there is when you develop a skill, ensure you learn, you explore, and then you do projects, as this is very
Mhm.
important. And I remember when I was starting out, so I think years back, my first project was very awkward. Yeah,
Mhm.
okay. I wrote my first content, 250 words, and it took
Mhm.
me 4 days to write to get that up. And after the work, I was like, God, when I look at back, I was like, was this my first project? So it was amazing. And some people, especially in the software development field, when you start off, they will be like, oh, kindly create a calculator. And after the
Mhm.
calculator, you be, oh, I'm not developing a reasonable project because they want to build a full website, they want to build a working software, they want to build a web-based software. But even as you said, everything starts from gradual projects, because I
Mhm.
believe that okay, one learn from projects. Or what do you think about it? Is it just learning online, watching videos, tutorial, or doing project along with it is the best way to learn?
I think it depends. Both are needed in some regards, because the online courses are really good, and there's a lot of really good places online that you can learn today, like that wasn't available, I don't know, 10 years ago. So in some ways, we've come a long way in terms of supporting self-learning online on the internet. So I think that the learning is definitely very convenient right now. Um, Certain areas require application for you to really understand the area. So, for example, if you're doing an AI ML project, right, or if you're learning about AI and ML, you could learn a lot online, but at the end of the day, you would not understand how to create like an ML model unless you go try to create one, right? So you can learn a lot of theory on the online courses, which will be super helpful, and you'll understand how the space works. But you only learn via practice. So you need to understand how to do a project in that area in order to completely grasp the concept you're learning. There are other areas where you could just do the learning, and that would be sufficient for you to grasp the concept. So it varies. AIML is an example where you could probably not do it without practice. I've seen very few people who've been able to grasp AIML without creating models themselves.
Wow.
There are other areas where, for example, if you're learning about dynamic programming, when you look at some of the dynamic programming problems, you will learn more by the online learning, because they'll describe the problem in a way that you can understand. Uh, Applying the dynamic problem solution in the real world is harder to find. So like in some ways you will have a harder time finding an example to implement. So that one you would probably learn more theoretically than practically.
Wow, awesome, awesome. That's great. Okay, welcome. For those of us just joining. Hi, Moin. Do you mind telling us about yourself and what track you are? And then let's have one or two questions for the guest if you have any. Moin, are you there? Okay, pending the time she unmutes herself, I can also say, okay, hi Chiamaka. Okay, Chiamaka is a volunteer alongside with BJ. They are working on this project with myself at EA, and it's been a wonderful work. Okay, Aziz, do you have any questions so far? And Sam, are you there too?
Yes, I'm with you, sir.
Oh, awesome. So do you have any question?
No question.
Okay, okay. One more question I would love to ask is, it's quite difficult. Okay, depending on the physical amenities available. For example, these people are underrepresented people, youth, and facing physical challenge. Now, how will you advise one who is physically challenged, not in terms of disability, but in terms of financial instability, to go about learning and then developing themselves? Is there any way the person can navigate through this challenge?
Yeah, I think there's different ways, Emmanuel. Like, I mean, a few suggestions come to mind. I've even seen this in Africa because even from like a Google standpoint, I think I've mentioned this to you before. We work closely with some organizations in Africa to be able to bring resources to people who are financially not as efficiently available to go spend resourcing on learning. So there are organizations in different areas of Africa that are spending resourcing, upskilling, very similar to the program you are doing, Emmanuel, in helping people getting those resources so they can learn. So that's one aspect. So one would be find an organization around you that is available to help you from a financial resourcing or even from a technical resourcing standpoint, right? Can they give you access to a laptop, a computer with internet
Computers.
on it so you could go use it, right? So because at the end of the day, the benefit of technology is you don't need a whole lot. You basically need a laptop, a computer, a mobile phone, and an internet connection, right? So in some ways, there's not a whole lot of physical resourcing needed. Now I understand that in itself would be a lot, depending on which region you're in, but there are plenty of organizations available. I will also say this. I mean, Emmanuel and I have talked about it in the past, where uh, the whole continent of Africa has huge potential and people realize it. So there are a number of organizations that are continuing to invest in how do we leverage that skill set and that potential that's available and get them to contribute, to helping technology make progress, not just for the continent of Africa, but beyond as well. So that's one. Look for organizations that can help. Second, if you have a mobile phone, I mean, if you are connected to us today, you probably already have the resources available. Like if you have a phone, if you have an internet connection, you could probably go, I don't know, watch a YouTube video, go look at, certain resources online to see what makes, interest to you, and drive your learning or at least start your learning from there. And then third would be find peers, like find people around you. This is something that I know in a lot of underdeveloped countries we're doing, which is can we do group based learning, right? So if in a group of 10 people one has a laptop and a connection, you could still learn through that resource. You don't need 10 different laptops, right? So in some ways, can you find a peer group where one of you has a resource and can you leverage that to kickstart the learning? And then once you start it, it can grow from that point on.
Oh, awesome. That's really an awesome one. Okay, at you, what we do is, although we are not currently providing technical facility, but we provide data support for the volunteers in order to aid them in learning. Because we know, okay, finances can be a challenge at times, and we're doing the little we can. And I still remember, okay, 4 years ago when I decided to go into the tech to just explore, it was quite difficult for me because I don't have a laptop, I don't have a data connection, and all I had was a phone. And
Mhm.
I would I was doing software engineering there because it relates into my field, computer science. I'm yet to discover my passion. So I started learning on phone, watching YouTube videos. I download some HTML application on phone, and I was able to build one HTML website with CSS on phone. Amazing. And before I know it, I never knew all those stuffs we were contributing on. Because after 2 years without laptop learning, and when the laptop came, I just find it easy in that aspect because this was something which I built upon previously. And thank you so much for that. It's really been marvelous. Okay, I will call Assis to ask this question now. Assis, please kindly, if you can turn on your video, please kindly turn on your video and then ask your question. Over to you.
Hello, hello. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank our mentor for the session. Um, it was really educating. My question is as regards my learning track and also a career path. So we have started working on models, machine learning models, and they are really interesting. And I noticed that when we work on these models, they are on our notebook. So if it is most likely that we don't have a team, we don't find ourselves in a team of software engineers that would always be deploying our models. So is it a wise idea to pick up software engineering together with machine learning, or it is better to just focus on machine learning and hope for a and hope to find yourself in a team where you have software developers?
It's a little bit of both, Aziz. So I'll maybe at least try to explain the ways in which at least we in Google or in previously in Microsoft have used machine learning engineers. It really depends on like how you're leveraging your machine learning knowledge. So there are way many examples where even in a standard software engineering team where you're just building an application or building a product, you're going to be leveraging machine learning. So you're applying the concepts of machine learning, um, where a model is probably already available and you're consuming that model to apply in a particular scenario. So an example could be you're building a shopping website and you want to show recommendations based on what somebody's added to their cart. Like Amazon does this, or some of the other retailers do this, where if you are ordered, I don't know, bread and eggs, you're more likely to buy butter, right? So as an example, like you can leverage a machine learning model to provide recommendations like those. So for consumption of ML models, you don't necessarily need a machine learning engineer in particular, right? Because a machine learning engineer is more focused on creating the model. So there's two aspects of machine learning. Yeah? There's application of machine learning model and there's creation of the
Great.
model itself. So for the application piece, which is a much larger set of scenarios, because there's a lot of places where we're using machine learning right now, you would just be a part of a software engineer team, which is building the application, and your consumption would be how do they apply your model in a scenario that they want to implement. Um, so that has a lot more opportunity in terms of volume, but the pattern is different because you are consuming technology, not creating it in some ways from an ML perspective. The second one is you're actually creating the models. You are creating, capturing the data sources, making sure that those data sources can be modeled so if an appropriate recommendation can come out. And that is typically a more specialized skill, which will usually have dedicated teams. So I can tell you at places like Google, Microsoft, most of these big tech companies, we have dedicated teams who build out, these specialized models for scenarios you want to implement, because a lot of them require large data sets to be processed in order to have more effective outputs from those models themselves. So
Oh,
it's a combination. Like there can be combinations of teams, and there can be specialized teams for ML engineers that are focused on solving a particular problem.
awesome. That's really awesome. Thank you so much for that. And we have another guest and mentor here, Aishee, and she's currently a software engineer at ACL Technology, and she has been very supportive. I would love you to introduce yourself to the team and let's have a word from you. Are you there? Hello.
Hello, Emmanuel. Hello, everyone. I'm
Hello.
Roychaudhuri. Yeah, and I've been working with HCL Technologies for the last 6 months. And I have graduated last year and I joined this year only. And very nice to meet you all. And I hope you guys are doing very well.
Awesome. Welcome. All right, we have Timothy. Timothy, quickly, let's have your question.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for this great opportunity. Basically, what I do, I'm a content creator. I do copywriting, article writing, blog writing, all forms of writing. You get. But I remember the person that introduced me to freelancing and remote job told me that to succeed in this line of business that I need to learn copywriting the American way. And I said, what does the American way mean? So basically what he's trying to tell me is that a lot of us we write good content yet we think domestically they're doing fine. But the moment they cross the border, you discover a lot of lapses. So how can we have universally acceptable copies where when you create content, you nobody will tell you that oh this content does not sound American, for example, or it does not sound Indian, or it sound African. So I don't know how to go about it. It has been a challenge for me though, honestly. Thank you.
I would like to answer that, but I have no idea. So I will throw it over to our mentors. Can you help out? Will you go first, Aishee, or Ankur? I hope you got the question.
Hello.
Yeah, yeah, we did. Go ahead, Aishi.
Yeah, okay. So content writing and all these, like it's a very new field, right? Like it has developed over the past few years, and it's actually very engaging if you find it very interesting. In fact, during my college years and all, I used to write content as a side hustle, and it was very like it interested me so much, starting from like learning a lot. And it's not only, I mean, it doesn't depend only from like from where you are, no matter which country it is, be it Africa, be it India, be it America, anywhere. I mean, there are so many things to, like work on. And especially now that remote work is available right now, I think there are also a lot of budding opportunities no matter where you are. So that's a very interesting point to consider right now. And of course, if you have the knack for it, and many readers, bookworms as people call themselves, they like to do all these stuff. And I since I have done it previously, and I would really love to continue it again sometime in the future if I get it. So if you really want it that much, I mean, you should always go for it, because it has a lot of scope as well. I mean, not only in content writing, it's you can also walk towards, creating content in general. And there are like so many platforms these days, like starting from YouTube, from Instagram, from like, and even there are so many blog websites where you can write your own blog and create. I mean, it's really it has a very growth potential, high growth potential. So yeah.
Wow, awesome. That was awesome. But hope you are not considering switching from software engineering to digital marketing and content creation. Oh, just joking.
No. Right now, not right now. Like I have been interested in software engineering for a long time. That's why I'm working in DevOps for the moment. But this is, as I said, it's just like a side hustle and a hobby, which sometimes if I get, time, I work on it. It's
Oh,
possible.
awesome. Thank you so much for that. Okay, over to our second guest. Do
Yeah,
you want
I think there's two aspects to this question, right? So there's an aspect of very similar to what Aishi said. There's an aspect of global appeal, that a piece of content can have, and nobody should be telling you that your content needs to be more American, more Indian, more
Yeah.
African, in order to be appealing. There's plenty of examples of this. If you go look at the most popular videos on YouTube, or some of the more viral articles that go online, uh, they're not optimized for a particular audience, right? When they created it, they were probably trying to create it in a simplistic way, which is why it would have global appeal. Um, so there's an aspect of content creation that needs to be appealing. So you need to, if you're in that kind of role, uh, you should make sure that you're thinking about what kind of content you're creating, and how that appeals to a broader set of audience. So that's one part which is more global. The other part, which might be what this person who told you about this might be talking about, when you are creating copyright, right? When you're writing articles, let's say for a publication house, uh, the way in which you write does vary region by region, country to country. So even down to certain words that you use could be totally acceptable in an American culture, but would be found offensive in Japanese culture, as an example. So that could be what they're talking about, because the words you use, the formatting you use, the way you structure a conversation in an article sense is very different country to country, region to region, language to language. So that's why like large organizations will typically have different copywriting teams that handle different languages. So that might be what they were talking about. I don't know. So I'm guessing at this point in time, but those are the two perspectives to think about. Global appeal for content, but yet there are certain things that can be specific to a language or a region and something to think about.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much for that. I think it has to do with the branding.
Emmanuel, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry for that. I think it has to do with the branding. Okay, for example, BBC. We have BBC General, and in Nigeria we have BBC Pigeon. Now their content approach is quite different. So I think every brand has a structure at which it creates its content. Yeah, that's just my thought. So Timothy, over to you. Your next question.
Thank you. Still on this content writing of a thing, uh, I think to talk more about this writing stuff, because that's what I basically studied in school. I studied mass communication and journalism, yes. And I remember in the classroom they told us, when you write, be concise, go straight to the point, be brief. Your readers probably don't have all the day to look at your content. At the same time, you see situations where clients will give you jobs and they will tell you, oh, you need to be technical. You're not using technical words. It's too you're using too ordinary words. Permit me to use that word for lack of a better word. What does it mean that you're using ordinary words? You expect me to start using maybe some dictionary jargons or something, probably words that I myself I even don't have idea about. You get? So is it always advisable to be technical or to be, because they said if you cannot explain it to a 6-year-old, then you don't know what you're talking about. And if you want to explain to a 6-year-old, you want to be as clear as possible. You want to be as concise as possible. You want to be as straight to the point as possible. So how do you go about all this? Thank you.
Well, just a quick one. I think writing for different users segments is very possible. For example, I know about documentation. That is where technical writer comes in place. I think that's right. Technical writer for coding documentation. Yeah. So that's where technical writer comes in place, and we have various audience. For example, you can be writing for kids, you can be writing for youth, you can be writing for those in the age people, and under different demographics, you use different tone, you use different languages. So it boils down to understanding your audience. For example, if you're writing for a developer, the words which you're going to use will be very different because you want to write as a technical writer. So that means, for example, you are writing for a documentation for a app or a software, then you should have knowledge of the basis of coding. That is HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and the likes. And you have to write, okay, step by step on how to implement this. I think this will give you better view. Yeah, that's just that from my side. I don't know if there is any contribution from our guest.
Well, as Emmanuel said, like it depends on the demographic, right? And it's a very important criteria that comes into mind while writing content. So it depends on like who you're writing for and the target audience and the topic that you're writing on, right? I mean, it depends. Like if you're writing something on technical part, technical aspects, say for instance a project or a software or something, you're describing a product, a new product. technical product that has been released in the market. So there you will have to cover a lot of specifications, technical aspects of that particular product, and talk about that. But if you're writing regarding lifestyle topics, right, or say for instance travel, so here you have to talk about a lot more aesthetic points and many other aspects possible travelers would consider to visit a particular place. Or for instance lifestyle articles, you would have to take up common problems that we face in every day, and common hacks, small hacks that can make our life a little bit more easier. So that is a very important point to consider while you're writing content, the demographic that you're targeting, the topic that you're focusing on.
I
Oh,
was gonna I was gonna
sorry.
probably add one example to that, Emmanuel. So like just using your example of understanding the audience, I think that's exactly right. Like you got to understand the audience. I was probably gonna even provide an example from a tech writer perspective. A tech writer who is writing content for describing how an app functions versus a tech writer who's writing content for how API functions is very different, right?
Yeah.
The audience is very different. The audience for API documentation is developers, so you can assume a certain level of technical understanding. Whereas when you're trying to explain how an app functions, you do want to be precise, concise, and use simplistic language because you're trying to explain functionality, not the technical implementation. So I do think what Emmanuel said is exactly right. Understand the audience. In fact, like for that, we at Google we have a tech writer discipline which has a number of people within it. And the number one question they ask when we ask them to write documentation is who's the audience, right? And they go try to understand the audience first before writing any content for them.
Awesome. Yeah. So who is the next? Question. Yeah. Who want to go next? Okay. Okay. Just one more question for myself. When do you think is the right time to start applying for job, even while learning and developing one's career? For example, I started software engineering course last 3 months. Do you think after 3 months I should start applying for jobs, or I just have to wait till I feel qualified before I start applying for job?
Okay. So what I believe is when you think that you are quite prepared, and as I had mentioned in my session earlier 2 weeks back, that it's very important to understand the job detail and what that position requires of you, right? So if you believe that you might like say, it's not like when you are applying for a job, it's very important to understand what role you're applying for and how, what exactly is expected of you, and how much you can live up to those expectations, right? So like it's very wise to start going through job descriptions and details after you start preparing, like for like as you said, after 3 months or something. So that is totally fine, so that you can understand what they are looking for you when you are trying to enter into industry, or when you're trying to start your career. But it is also very important to apply to jobs that you only want to take up seriously, because the job application process, it's a huge one, right? And it takes a lot of time, energy and patience. So and also to get selected and back that role, to have that you have to give in a lot of efforts, right? You have to prepare for the interview, you have to do everything, and that takes a lot of tenacity at the same time. So I believe it is very important to apply for jobs that you think you really want to do, or else you'll just be wasting your time, and if that does not go right, it might actually bring down your morale, which is not what we want. So it's very important to balance that timing of preparing and applying for the job at the same time. Like you can just go through it, and when you finally think that yes, this is what I am looking forward to, this is contributing going to contribute to my career, this particular role, or that I can grow in this role, then I think it's of course a good idea to apply for that particular job.
Awesome. That's really wonderful. And thank you so much for that.
Sure.
So do you want to go anchor on that?
Yeah, I was going to say this is a very divided topic, at least in the tech industry. There's various thought processes on this example. I think if I remember correctly, Emmanuel had posted this question on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah.
There's varies of answers that come in. Uh, I think there's three different aspects to this question. There's an aspect of qualification, like how much do you believe you are
You are
qualified for the
qualified
role?
for the job.
uh, I think there's an aspect of preparation. Do you feel like you've prepped enough to be able to go through the process, like Aishee pointed out? And I think there's an aspect of what does the role demand. And I'll explain the third part because I think the first and second we've already covered, in other areas. What does the role demand is important because there are roles where the organization, the company, the specific role is okay with you coming in not fully qualified or not fully prepared, but they're willing to spend the time. Like a place like Google, a place like Microsoft, maybe a place like HCL in India, are willing to spend the time on you to prepare you, to help you learn before you get quote unquote productive for the company. And in that kind of role, you could probably go in, I don't know, 60% qualified for the job, and they will happily spend the time to you. There are other roles which are very explicit about we need this job done in the next 3 months, right? And they want an application written, some code written, some other job be done, but they do not have the time to make you learn. They want
Yeah.
somebody qualified, somebody already prepared. They can come in and do the job. So you need to understand what the kind of role is. So it is an aspect of qualification, preparation, and then what does the job role demand? Because if the job role is something where it's short term, then if you're not qualified, there's probably not a lot of benefit going for it. If the job role is more long term, we want to invest in the person. They can come in, learn, and then evolve. Then it might still be worthwhile, even if you're not 100% qualified for it.
Awesome. Wow, that's really wonderful. Thank you so much for that. Okay, Sam, is that okay by you? Are you cleared? Please don't be shy. Come on, unmute yourself and ask a question.
I have a question, please.
Okay, Timothy.
All right, thank you. Uh, um, Special thanks to our guest so far. You've been of help. But there's something that has been bothering me, and it is the fact that a lot of emphasis has been laid on resume and how resumes should look like, what you need to put in your resume, and what you need to do away with as far as your resume is concerned. As far as I'm concerned, I don't think resume is enough as far as screening and getting the best is concerned, because it is just a document. Anybody can just put down anything on a document. Up to the extent that you see people start, they tell you, oh, your resume needs to be 8 years compliant. There are uh, there are recruiters that will tell you, oh, your resume is not 8 years compliant. Another set of recruiters will tell you that it's nothing like 8 years, that it is a human that is behind the system that is taking the decision. So you don't even know you don't know what to believe, you don't know who to believe. In fact, I don't know of other places, but in my country, resume writing is a big business. You see people making money just to write resume for people. They will tell you, oh, I will make your resume up to international standards to be 8 years compliant and all that. So what do we do? A lot of Africans are in a dilemma as far as resume is concerned. Thank you.
Awesome. That's a good question. For that, I will just stay backstage and let's hear from the hiring manager perspective. So I think, please, Uncle, you have the floor, and then Aishee too. She's a career coach. I think they too they have the floor. Let me stay backstage on this one. All right.
Yeah, I was going to say for this particular one, I think you need to understand that the resume is an inexact piece of data that is still going to get used to evaluate your candidature for whatever role you're applying to. Uh, is it perfect? No. Can we guarantee what you write in it is accurate and truthful? No. Do we have another choice? Not really, right? Because at the end of the day, the only other choice is, I don't know, give you an internship, give you a 6-month project, give you a 3-month project, look at the work you've actually done and evaluate it. But that process takes time, right? You can't evaluate it in 10-15 minutes. So historically as an industry, we've chosen to use this construct of a resume, which is a, I don't know, self-certification of sorts to describe in hopefully a relatively concise way what your qualifications and what your professional experience has been like. So in some ways, yes, it is a self-certification of what you believe you are capable of, and it is used as a first signal for hiring managers, recruiters to look at, would this be a close enough match for what they're looking for specific to a job position, right? So in some senses, yes, it is, not perfect. Yes, it is inexact, but the other choices are even more effort intensive in terms of what time and effort it would take to evaluate whether you are indeed a good match for that role or not. So we've chosen to use the resume as the first signal. It is not the only signal. It is only the initial signal that is used to say, can we move to the next step, which could be an initial phone call, an initial meeting, an initial interview, and that's where reality hits, right? So if you've, I don't know, put in a bunch of things on your resume that are not correct, it tends to come out pretty quickly. Because your interviewers are, I don't know, they're probably as smart as you are. So if you're being smart by putting things that might be inaccurate, they're also smart in looking for signals that can tell them whether it's correct or not. So it's not perfect. I would say people, in my opinion, people over-index on the resume. I think the resume is, like I said, the first signal. So yes, have an updated resume, have it be crisp, have it be concise. But then there are multiple other avenues of doing that first reach out. Like many organizations work through referrals, many organizations work through projects, internships that are also available. So leverage those channels as well. But yeah, I mean, having a resume is useful, but I would say don't over-index on it. You do not need to spend multiple weeks writing a resume. You do not need to pay someone thousands of bucks to write your resume. These are all services available. If you're terrible at it, use them, but they're not necessarily required.
Wow. Wow. Awesome. I was surprised. Someone reached out to me, I think, on Friday. And he was like, can you review my resume? And when I look at it, he has personal information like the date of birth, he has his place of origin, he has a state. And he was like, oh, this is the outcome of over $100 for a masterclass which I attend. I was like, what? And seriously, and this is just it. You don't. Oh, fuck.
Viewer will look into it, and he will find out whether you are aware of it or not within those few minutes. I mean, most of the recruiters, they are that experienced, right? So keeping all that in mind, it is always advisable to be as true, and that way it's also easier to communicate with the interviewer also, because it's totally fine to mention that you know something maybe a particular tool, a particular technology you have a very little knowledge of, but you can build upon it. But the reverse is that does not leave a very good impression. So that's the thing I would like to cover.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And I'm really enjoying the section and I'm learning a lot. Okay, who is the next? I think Chamaka, you have the floor. Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, Emmanuel, you're audible.
Oh,
Yes,
awesome.
you are.
Oh, I don't think Chamaka is here. So, anyone with a question?
I think Sammy has a question that he has asked.
Okay,
Uh,
I think I missed that. Sammy, please kindly go ahead. Wow. Okay. Sorry. Did anyone get Sammy's question? So we can just go over it.
no, this I don't think this has been addressed yet. So, Sammy, your question: what digital channel is best to approach a client you feel need your skill? There are a lot of digital channels today, right? And one of the most important one is it's a really good connect, and to approach a client that you feel need your skill, I think it's also important to build your LinkedIn profile in such a way that you're applying. And it's not only for LinkedIn, I mean it is for any digital place out there, let's say Indeed, or like various job platforms, monster.com. So these or say Glassdoor also. So there are so many digital platforms where they have created this like job applying profiles and all that. So it's very important to build your profile to that way. And say for instance a particular client needs a particular set of your skills, right? So and you have that, and or you're working on that particular domain, or on a similar or related project, right? So say if it's for LinkedIn, I mean it's always uh, essential to highlight that and present exactly what you're doing in a very comprehensive manner, so that when you apply on that job, or when you share your profile with the particular client, he or she can go through it and get an idea of whether you're fit for it or not, and then he or she can contact you at the same time.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Just to add to that.
Emmanuel, you're on mute.
Oh,
Am I on mute?
okay. Awesome. Just to add to that, I think having a portfolio is a good way. And one thing which I recommend to my team is for writers and digital marketer, you can use app like Journal Portfolio. Yeah, journal portfolio. You can use that, make a portfolio in 5 to 10 minutes, and then send a link to all your work to your client. And that's a way to convince. And also, LinkedIn and Indeed is a good way too. And it's been awesome. Thank you. Oh, Sammy, I hope you got that. Understood, right?
Yes, sir. But I have another question. Sorry.
Finally,
My
he
question,
speaks.
my
Ooh.
question, what do you do when your client needs experience and you don't have the experience to get that job? Maybe you are just starting, like you just got that skill, and your client needs up to 2 to 3 years experience and you don't have experience. What do you do? What do you advise us?
Okay, who will love to take that? Aishee, Ankur. The question is, when you don't have enough experience required by your client, what do you do? Is there a way to navigate through that?
I believe that it's very important to understand the requirements of the client, right? And to see whether it is something that you can contribute to, right? And for an interest, like when you are very low on the experience, or for someone who is starting the career, it's very important to like to show their skills and whatever projects and whatever like particular say webinars or seminars or anything that they've conducted or they've worked on, to just show that these are the these are the skills that they've developed from those particular experiences. And it's also very important to do as many internships as possible, especially when you are starting off, right? I mean, to like internships doesn't really count as a particular experience, but the skills that you pick up and the networkings that you do from there, it's very valuable. And so it's always like whenever any client or any such company or any job that you want to apply for, but you are falling short of experience, right? Sometimes if you have the skill that they require, and you can, if you can show a demo of your work on the lines that they want, I mean, it can increase your chances of getting selected, uh, because it's at the end of the day, it's important to finish the work that they want you to do, right? So it's most of the times experience is actually a very big problem, because there are times you can't even apply to the job if you don't have that particular amount of experience. But as I mentioned, if you have a particular demo that you have worked on, any project, any model, any application that you have built, it might be a very simple application, but if it shows your skill, your expertise to them, it kind of speaks for your experience. Like, even though you don't have that particular experience, you have that skill to make up for it. So that is something you can do, like to build up your skill enough to impress them. Like, I can, even though I am lacking on the experience, I have this particular skill and I have worked on these stuff. This is my demo, and I can do even more. So that is a way of convincing them.
Wonderful.
I hope that answer your question, Samuel.
Yes, 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 yes. Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. I think we have one, two questions from the chat box from Musembi from Kenya. He said, "Hello, I'm Samo from Kenya. How should an entry level resume look like? What determines its strengths?" Yeah, so how should an entry level resume look like and what determines its strengths? So, I hope I'm audible. Yeah.
Yes, Emmanuel.
Okay, awesome. So, quickly for that, I'm going to just brief on that on a simple year resume template